Kiss of Death by the Neon Zangetsu, Chapter 10, A Kiss of Fate. Life isn't about the destination, no, it's the journey. Our lives are full of twists and turns, ups and downs, lefts and rights. But you see, it's those moments, all the beautiful chaos, that makes us who we are. The future, kiss of fate. And shall we seek the sword next? The suggestion came one mad morning as Naruto and Salem lay entangled up in one another, nestled in bed, dappling morning sunlight spilled in through the window, piercing half-drawn curtains of blood crimson to bathe their bedroom in crimson relief. Beneath it, Naruto quirked a blond brow. "Why that one?" he uttered, jaw popping yawn as he sprawled onto his back. "Any particular reason?" "Just a hunch," she hummed, stroking at his cheek. "Call it a woman's intuition." Naruto's brow drew down. He recognized that tone. Worse, she didn't even try to be subtle about it. He knew at once that Salem was up to something. Her smile told him all he needed to know. They'd spent centuries together. By now he knew her tales like the back of his hand. What are you plotting?" "You wound me, dear husband." For all her words, that small, sly smirk didn't waver in the least. "I would never sanction such a scheme without you." He rolled his eyes as she ran a hand down the length of her flank. "Salem, no. Out with it already." "Oh, very well." She sighed and nestled into him. "Can I not have a bit of fun these days?" "You can." He stroked her cheek. "But your plans have a tendency to be explosive." She sniffled. "They do not. Name one time." His brow climbed higher. "Vacuo." Er, She winced as the scarred veins in her cheeks pulsed. "One time, and you never let me forget it. Still, you were told that the sword exists outside of time." Her hand splayed across his chest. "Does that not fascinate you? Just think of what we could do with such power." Hmm. Truth be told, it did, but in the same vein it made Naruto wary. He'd seen all manner of jutsu in his day long before he found himself stranded in Remnant. Magic was just as dangerous, and the warning he'd received had not been a pleasant one. Either the gods were being dicks again, quite likely, or this was another trap. "We've been through worse." "We have," he allowed, "but I prefer to err on the side of caution." It wasn't just their lives at stake here, but those of their children, and if the rumors were to be believed, their children's children. He didn't think Erie was pregnant, let alone weaning, but they'd been rather ill as of late. A tiny shiver overtook him. Grandchildren. He'd never thought to see the day, but then again, he'd seen many a day since he gained the gift of eternal youth. "Time isn't something we should mess with," he decided aloud. "Too risky." "Why ever not?" She huffed and laid her chin on his arm. "We are eternal, you and I. Times hold no sway on us." "It does for our children." She winced still beneath him at the words. "We don't know if they'll be around forever." Her smile soured. "Fair enough." "Speaking of children," an alarm went off in the back of his head as her hand traveled lower. "Did you manage to seduce that fawness girl yet?" Her words sounded innocent enough, but he knew better. "Diana Belladonna is such a lovely girl." "Gone with this?" Naruto buried his head in a pillow. "Salem, no." "Salem, yes." She reached over and pinched his cheek. "Just think of it, a girl with dark hair, cat ears, and whiskers. She'll be perfect. I want this to happen, Naruto." Her forehead kissed his. "I need this to happen. It is a need that cannot be denied. What will it take to convince you?" "More than you have." He puffed out his cheeks. "I ain't doing it." "So stubborn." Salem kissed his nose. "I already told you I don't mind if you take a mistress or three." "It's three now?" His voice briefly jumped an octave, such was his surprise. "Whatever happened to just one?" "Curiosity happened." Salem offered a self-same smile. "I wish to spread our bloodline across the kingdoms far and wide. Think of it." She turned her head just so, ashen, their hair falling over a dark eye as she ran a hand over her flank. "No more of this senseless squabbling between human and faunesses. All will be our children, all united under our bloodline." It was a tempting no resist. Like I said, nope. "Are you sure about that?" Salem pressed closer, pushing the fullness of her form against him. "I can be very persuasive." Naruto clenched his jaw, fighting off the spark of desire that she stirred in him. I'm sure you can, but she leaned in and crushed her mouth to his. He blinked as she pulled away. That is a very sound argument. She licked her lips, eyes burning like a dark fire in the light, bright red against black. Less talk, more pleasure, beloved. He squeezed her rear until it made a pleased sound as she climbed up top of him. Within moments he sheathed himself in her once more, her head tilted just so as she arched her back, revealing in her closeness. Then as she began to move, slowly at first, then in earnest, the alluring sway of her breasts, so heavy from her last pregnancy, captured the eye, hypnotic in their gravid majesty. He moved to meet her, wrapping one arm around her waist, even as the other drew her in for a scorching kiss. Her fingers threaded through his hair, trying to get me pregnant again, are you? He laughed as she lowered herself onto him again. Well, you said you wanted lots of children. I did, didn't I? She nuzzled his neck. I think it should be twins this time. I've already thought of names. She was still riding him into oblivion when the door to their chamber shook suddenly beneath the heavy blow. Salem snarled. Naruto ignored it. Another blow shook the doors. Salem quickened her pace atop him, intent to pretend she'd not heard a thing. A third impacted, denied her. What in the hell? Who is that? Salem snarled. I'll tell you who it is. She cast a withering glare at the door, pitching her voice in to be heard. A dead man. Begging your pardon, my lord and lady. A guard's quivering voice came through the door at her words. But we have something of a, well, situation outside the castle. Well, neither answered. He barreled on. Your lordship insisted that I inform him if such an event were to transpire. Husband and wife exchanged a blank look. Salem sighed into it. Really? Uh, Naruto shrugged. What can I say? I'm a people person. She huffed. Your people can wait until we're finished. Naruto laughed as she shoved him down. Fair enough. That's the problem. You must be joking. Now, Kurama, I'm sure they're quite fearsome. They're a bunch of peasants. They couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. In that they were in agreement. Naruto considered the ragtag group at the gate just below their balcony. There was a veritable mob of people raging down there in the courtyard, armed with torches and pitchforks alike. They certainly were a band of misfits, dirty clothes and dirty faces all. Each looked like they traveled a long way to have a word with him. Some of them weren't wearing shoes. There were even children among them. He counted at least 100 down there. Their guards were looking positively harassed as they held them back. It wasn't weakness that stayed their hands, but orders. He forbade them from killing senselessly. People would be people, he supposed, those fleeting, beautiful, and imperfect creatures with their short lives and shorter tempers. It was a shame, really, for all their weaknesses. The people of Remnant had so much potential. It hurt to see them wasted so. He wasn't even sure why he'd come. Then again, he didn't have to be. He could sense the sheer negativity from here. Whatever the reason, the purpose here wasn't peaceful. Salem proved more vocal in her opinion. This is Ozma's doing. She scowled down the band of brigands. He rallies the people against us. You don't know that for certain. Naruto laid a hand on her shoulders. They might just be afraid of us. Fear is good, she huffed. It keeps them in line. Keen blue eyes met the sullen red. His wife had precious little patience for anyone outside the family, and why should she? Humanity wouldn't accept her. He could change his appearance at will, but she was trapped in her current form, beautiful though he thought it was. Peace had never been an option for her, not since the cataclysm, but it should be. There was no need to rule over these people like tyrants. I'm going down there, no, he declared to Salem. Come with me, please, so we can resolve this peacefully. Oh, very well. Red eyes rolled in mild annoyance. I shall make an attempt for you. His piece said, and Naruto leaped down from the balcony and alighted before them. He struck the ground at the speed, kicked up a cloud of dust, one that sent the townfolk scurrying backwards like so many frightened mice before an angry cat. Behind him, the palace guards stood the ground just as he trained them to, although he swore he heard one particularly plucky soul heave a sigh of relief. A low chuckle pervaded the air. You and your bloody superhero landings. Hey, It might be murder on the knees, but it's effective. Salem glided down beside him as he rose from his pointed crouch. Side by side, they faced the angry masses. At such close proximity, Naruto noticed something he hadn't before. These people were starving, while many of the adults were thin. A few children were downright emaciated. That didn't make any sense. They'd kept the people in the surrounding villages well supplied. He had seen to it personally a decade ago, established the supply lines himself. Why then was this lot in such sorry shape? A thorn of confusion plucked at his heart. Right then he fixed a smile to his face. What seems to be the problem here? A torrent of noise answered him, for which he caught only snatches. Monsters! Bloody thieves! Starving because of you! One at a time, Naruto raised his hands, and gradually they quailed before his act. If you're hungry, I'll see you fed. Why have you come here? Tell me. There was a murmur at that, but none wanted to be the first to step forward. Finally someone did. A tired-looking woman with dark hair clad in a line shift hobbled forward, moving with a noticeable limp. His gaze locked upon her, taking in her lined visage and the strange bandolier of potions she wore strapped across her bosom. The faint scent of roots and berries clung to her. "An alchemist, then? One of your witches seduced my brother?" she wailed, wringing her hands. "Just snatched him right up in the dead of night. I haven't seen him since." "Witches!" A muscle jumped in Naruto's jaw. Salem stifled the smile behind her palm, but didn't interrupt. "Calm. Don't let it register. Calm down." He bit back a growl. "Who are you?" She wilted a little beneath his stare, and dared a tentative curtsy. "Maya, my lord, and who is your brother?" Salem stepped up beside her. Credit where it was due, the wife didn't flinch. "Ethan," came the immediate rejoinder. "Bewitched him with her dark arts, she did. I know she was one of yours." Her hand flailed, stretching a crude shape. "She was tall, frightfully so, with pale skin and glowing golden eyes. When I tried to stop her, the poor housewife thrust her injured leg forward, and he noticed the crude tourniquet there. She gave me this. I can barely walk now." Well, that the moniker fight someone, all right. Asuna had mentioned that she'd found herself someone. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. "Daughter, why do you do this?" "Step forward." Mia eyed him like a king taijutsu. "Why?" His patience slipped. "So I can heal your leg, you silly girl." The crowd went berserk. "Dark magic! Don't trust him, Nan. Stay away! He'll curse the lot of us." When she didn't budge, Naruto rolled his eyes and waded into the crowd, uncaring for his safety. Someone tried to bar his path, only to find himself similarly flung aside. Many a man and woman shrank back at that, but Maya wasn't quick enough. But be it her injury, pride, or simply sheer fear, she stood her ground as he knelt before her and laid hands on her bloody bandage. The faint smell of rot and decay reached his nose as he did. Naruto winced when he saw the black veins there. "This may sting a little." Maya scowled at him. "Wait, what do you mean?" Ah! Her words peaked into a shriek as he ripped the bandage away and pressed his palms to the blackened flesh of her thigh. Maya's cry faded away into a confused gasp as the pulse of healing chakra pervaded her body. It was the work of an instant to draw the poison out, then neutralize it. 10 seconds passed, 20, 30. Satisfied with his work, Naruto pulled back, leaving her quivering on her feet. Was that a whimper just now? Surely not. If he felt Salem's stare lingering on him as he stood, he pretended not to notice. "There you go. Rest assured I'll see your brother return to you if he was taken against his will. You can stay at the castle until he's found." Her head bowed a little, a pretty pink flush on her cheeks. "You are too kind, my lord." "No, that's not good enough," someone cried within the crowd. "That witch needs to be punished." Her words emboldened the masses. "String her up and burn the witch." "Watch your tongue!" Salem snarled, and the heavens above darkened with her mood. "That is my daughter you speak of. Count yourself lucky that we deigned to treat with you at all." "What my lovely wife means," Naruto interrupted with a black look, is that we're here to protect you. Tell us what you need, and we'll see it done. A rippling murmur passed through the mob. If you aren't receiving food or having trouble with the crops, I'll deal with it. Silence reigned beneath his words. I'm sure we can all get along, and he sensed the attack coming long before someone threw the first stone. It would have been the simplest thing to dodge the rock, catch it, and fling it back. Instead, he stood his ground. Sure enough, something struck the side of his head, snapping it to the side. The blood sliced down over his eye and slid. He turned the other cheek. Are you satisfied? Disappointed blue eyes sought the one responsible. Go ahead, throw another stone. I won't budge. Another ripple of disquiet passed through the mob as their anger began to fade. Good. He had no desire to resolve this with violence, much less involve any of their offspring in this matter. You're all welcome to stay in the keep for the next week, he promised them. I'll see you fed and clothed properly until then. From there, we'll pay your village a visit to see what we can be done. A few weapons fell, and he allowed a true smile to bloom on his face. Anyone who has a grievance on a problem can come to me directly. I'll make things better, I swear on my soul. They are false gods, someone cried out, startling the crowd. Listen not to their words, for they are not human. The peace didn't last, of course. It was inevitable. The crowd parted as one. There was another among them, a man with a certain strength of spirit, one he recognized, if only for the scent of his soul. Clad, flowing in blue robes and dark of hair, he looked somewhat cleaner than he'd been at their last meeting, more confident than before, arrogant even. The face might be different, and the eyes a startling silver, but the soul within was the same. Salem Absolute hissed, Obsma! Well, well, seemed that someone found his spine again and lost his mind in the process. Formerly Ozma, the former knight's smile didn't waver. Just Otto for now. The people have had enough of your tyranny, sorcerer. They see through your lies. Tyranny? Salem quirked a pale brow. What tyranny? We have brought law and order to Mistra and Marjorie in the wake of the cataclysm, a disaster you caused. You say that, and yet Naruto stepped up, sweeping an arm out before him. We do our best to keep our subjects safe. All who come to us for aid leave satisfied, and if they aren't, we help them. The beginnings of a frown touched his face as he felt anger stir in him. Did you rile these people up? What you gain from this? What I want doesn't matter. His scepter flashed out. That people need to rule themselves. He scoffed. Under your leadership? Better than yours? Aha! Salem snarled in triumph. Says the false prophet. Do not test me, Salem, the knight set his jaw in a frown. My power has doubled since we last met. Good, she sneered. Twice the pride, double the fall. Only for you, Silver Eyes flashed. The gods have opened my eyes and granted me sight. There was an edge to his smile now, one that alarmed Naruto. I have seen your defeat, and it begins today. So you say. She stalked forward, summoning an orb of black spell fire into her grasp. You should not have returned. I am not alone in this, Salem. Strike me down, and I will come back more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Her smile turned cruel. Whoever said I intended to kill you, dear Ozma, your capture will be more than sufficient. He warded his staff before him. If you think I'll let you take me alive, you are madly mistaken. Deep inside him, Naruto winced. Salem, I don't think that's a good idea. A single swipe sent the poor man crashing back into the mob. Never mind, she's got this. Perhaps it was time to hasten their search for the relics after all. We can't come with you? It was too much to hope that their children would take kindly to their plans, much less argue. Naruto felt the migraine coming on as he listened to everyone babble at him. Ozma had been true to his words. He'd not gone quietly. He knew better than to allow himself to be captured. Still, those silver eyes of his, they had let the matter linger too long. Like so many other things, they'd grown lax in their eternity. It was time for a change. I'm afraid not, my dears. Salem drew their youngest close, running her hands through her pale hair. The relics, They're too dangerous. This is something we have to handle alone. Estes lounged against the nearby table. But who will be in charge while you're away? I'm not opposed to ruling, but I'm hardly suited for it. Loki perked up. But I am. Everyone began to babble anew, offering ideas of their own. That was the question, wasn't it? They'd had many children. It only made sense that matters of succession, however temporarily, would cause some contention among them. Naruto fought down a wince. It was a decision they'd both considered and made long ago. As this couldn't lead, Alcina was too bloodthirsty. Literally, Morgana would sooner slaughter all who opposed her. The worst were too young or otherwise too rash. His gaze flicked over his shoulders. That right falls to the eldest. All eyes turned to the recipient of his gaze. Me? Winnie blinked back with wide or amber eyes, lone wing curling about herself, not unlike that of a fallen angel. No, 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 I'm not ready. You are. Naruto patted her head, and you'll have help. Wide eyes blinked. I will. Of course you will. Your brothers and sisters will help you, to say nothing of Godbrand. He pulled her in for a quick hug. Eerie, you'll keep an eye on your sister, won't you? About that, their eyes, their second child, fidgeted a little under their gaze. Mama, Papa, I might be preoccupied in the next few months. Naruto blinked. Wanna run that me by me again, Earring? Her pale face turned rose red crimson. Salem perked up. Grandbabies? Well, wow, that I'll castrate the bastard later. Naruto pulled her aside before he could start babbling. Fine, change of plans. Loki and Heisenberg will help Wayne. A guffish came from the back of the room. Why me? Because you're a right clever bastard and Wayne needs that. Also because I said so. Loki, all bite but preened. I won't let you down, father. I know you won't. The point I'm trying to get across here is that you all need to be careful. I'll be leaving a couple of clones behind to protect you all, but I want you all, his gaze swept over each of them, to be on guard and try not to kill the humans while we're away. Near the back of the congregation, Carmilla huffed and stalked away. Salem shot him a lingering look as she did. Naruto sighed. On it. Whipped. No, he shook his head as he slipped out after his pale progeny. If anything, Sam's afraid to discipline her. They're too much alike. He has to be me. She won't listen to anyone else. Someone else might get it wrong. The ghost of a smile touched whiskered cheeks. Something like that. A small part of him had known their children would argue, prepared for it even. Rebellion was another matter entirely. He knew that look of resentment in Carmilla's eyes. Best nip that in the bud now rather than later. If Carmilla was getting too big for her britches, she needed to be dealt with, and soon. He caught her out in the yard. Carmilla, he called after her. Sweetie, wait. She didn't slow, his brow furrowed. Daughter. His voice lashed at her with a hint of chakra, and she froze. Rooted where she stood, her shoulders quivered a little, and he regretted frightening her, but she left him with no choice. He counted to 9, and only then did she dare to pivot and face him with a limp smile. It didn't quite reach her eyes. Yes, Daddy. Don't you, Daddy, mean? A few quick strides devoured the distance between them, bringing him before her. Tell me what's wrong. Wrong? Her eyes narrowed. What's wrong? As if you don't know. She whirled and slashed at a tree with her nails, deadly claws tearing a great divot in the wood. Why do you favor the mortal so? Because I used to be one. Irrelevant. She shook her head sharply. Whatever you used to be, you're more than that now. Really, I don't know why you bother with them. You're too kind. It's a weakness. Why teach them all that? And there was another remnant of his misplaced youth. Carmilla, no, that girl, but Daddy, they're livestock. She turned and stormed away, leaving him to trail after her. We deserve to rule over them. A pale arm cast out to the kingdom below. We're gods. Our ambition should be all that matters. This world belongs to us because the likes of them never knew what to do with it. Naruto sighed. You certainly have your mother's temper. Some call their children monsters. He disagreed. A bit of corrupted DNA did not make a monster. It was your spirit, your will, your soul that determined who you are. Camilla had always been a willful child, to the exclusion of all else. In time she might yet rally others to her cause. That couldn't happen. Time for a little discipline. Do you realize what you're trying to do? He spoke slowly, willing her to understand. Our family's power, there's no denying that, but we're still too few, even with the fondness, even with our numbers swelling every day, of every hour, of every second. We have our limits. You're pushing those. Of course, I understand. She whirled away from him. I understand that there won't be a kingdom to protect if you're afraid to act. The world must learn to fear us, fear me, just as they fear you. Naruto recoiled. Did they fear him? No, surely not. He didn't want their fear, anything but that. He'd managed to placate the mob today with words alone. Even with Ozma's blatant attempt at escalation, many of the townsfolk had gone to bed with full bellies and warm clothes. What Carmilla was proposing, it was madness. That's pride and vanity talking, not leadership, he said at last. You need patience. While you wait and be patient, the world rallies itself against us. His wayward daughter shouted him down as she tore up another tree. Today was just the latest example, yet you would stand and give speeches, placate the people while our kingdom balances on a knife's edge. We must crush them before that, if only to ensure they never dare rise against us. His grim side reared its ugly head. In that instant his temper slipped its leash. "You are a vain, cruel, and greedy child," she spat in his face, lost in her fury. "And you are an old man and a fool." Karma hissed in the back of his head. His eyes flashed, and she recoiled, realizing she'd gone too far. "Father," she babbled, "I didn't mean to." Naruto slammed a finger at her with a snarl, shocking her into silence. "In your arrogance, no, in your stupidity, you would expose your brothers and sisters to horror of war. I will not have it." He stalked forward and leaned down, looming over her, pressing his forehead to hers. "There will be no war. Do you understand?" She cringed aside as he grabbed her by the chin, wrenching her face back to his. "And if there is, we will not be the first to make that move. If I get one whiff of your plotting, you will no longer be a part of this family. You will banish me." She bared her fangs at him in incredible rage. "I am your daughter, your blood." Sapphire eyes snapped into scarlet as the white of his eyes boiled black. "And I am your father." In an instant he loosed the entirety of his power upon her. Kurma slammed into existence around him, rimmed with gold but also shadow, the taint of the grim pool showing through here in all its twisted majesty. Wild eyes blazed down at her, teeth larger than trees, ready to snap her up in an instant. Carmilla crashed backwards on her rear, looking every bit like the frightened child she still was on the inside. A large golden paw crashed down, pinning her in place as she lay there. "Do not mistake my kindness for weakness." Massive teeth snapped at her face. "You will behave, or so help me, I will strip you of your powers and tan your hide when I return. Do you understand?" She whimpered. "Not good enough, I said." He growled. "Do you understand?" Her head bobbed in a frantic, fitful nod. Still not acceptable. "Either you said I would dare." Golden eyes shimmered away as he dropped to the floor and stood before her. "They said I wouldn't fight a god. I did that twice. And for all our silly delusions of grandeur, you are no god, Carmilla." She quailed under his gaze. Naruto whirled away, cloak flaring behind him. "Know your place, and never challenge me again." He made it all of 5 steps before she crashed into his back. Tears soaked his cloak, accompanied by fitful sobs as she clung to him. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whimpered as she hadn't since she was a child. "I'm sorry. I'll never disobey you again." After a moment's thought, Naruto pivoted and pulled her close. She quivered in his arms, trembling uncontrollably. He didn't trust himself to give a speech. Instead, he simply held her. His chin came down over her head as he stroked her back, gradually easing the fear from her shoulders. Even then, she continued to weep. He wondered if she heard his reply. "I'm sorry, too." Previous. "I have come to treat with you, silver-eyed warriors. Send forth the leader of your tribe." The crowd parted as one to make way. Naruto smiled. "Hello there." Oh my heavens," Salem Absolute squealed. "So adorable." Naruto tilted his head nearly 90 degrees. "Huh, you're right. Cute little thing. You are unworthy of the relic." A fist slammed down in Naruto's face, bloody in his nose. Pain, he winced as he reeled back. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. A man, was it a man, batted his hand aside and vanished in a swirl of light. You can't touch me. I was handcrafted by the relic to kill you. My speed, my stamina, my weapon, they dwarf yours in comparison to you. I am a demigod. Really? You're quoting that? Really? 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 Yes, really, not die for the world, the monster. Blue eyes narrowed to irritating slits. First gate open. His would-be killer balked. First one, and there was pain. You don't seem to understand. He kicked the assassin through the wall. This world. He reached down, grabbing him by the face, and slammed him through a tree in the yard. It isn't yours to conquer. His would-be killer stumbled up just in time to catch a spinning backhand to the face. It's mine. You'll never win. A fist slammed into his chest. Silly relic, I already have. Now fight like your life's on the line. Because it is. Zillam pursed her lips. You don't seem to understand either. This would no longer belong. This world no longer belong to the gods. She reached out, grabbed the relic guardian by the face, and slammed them down. It belongs to us. Call us monsters if you wish. We will have our revenge. Why won't you die? Better men and gods have than you have tried. Let us not speak of such somber things. We have a battle to plan. Fair enough. End of chapter 10.